a bit on the show, and I know you have a mutual love for this film and would understand where I was trying to go with it. You know, and it's so crazy to me that these guys, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, ended up fleshing out this script when, you know, what they were going to do at first is way different.
Yeah.
Where it's like, basically, it's like, yeah, this guy that's like really smart and his buddy are going to take or figure out a way to like fuck over the government or whatever. And it's like, you know, where did you get like this super avant-garde style film, you know, from that? But who knows? Maybe it was a happy accident or something, but
yeah.
Dude, and then them getting Robin Williams to do this, I think.
Oh yeah, that's what makes the movie.
Yeah, I think when Sean is introduced, immediately steals the show, you know. And I feel like nobody holds a candle to Matt Damon except for Sean, and that's very, very intentional because they see themselves. I guess they see themselves in each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Where, you know, Sean spends...
Yeah, because they're both from both Southeast.
Yes. And I feel like they you know, Sean, within the 8 sessions I think that take place within the movie, Sean is trying to break down those defense walls that he knows are up because of, you know, what Will has experienced within his life. And it's a very interesting journey where you don't really think, when you, like, say you're watching this for the first time, you don't really think that that's the direction they're going to take, but it really does end up being all about Sean trying to break through to Will and say, you know, what happened to you growing up is not your fault, and like you should do and follow your dreams like however you see fit. Like, stop trying to, don't isolate yourself, don't listen, you know, to what other people want for you. You have to make these decisions for yourself, you know what I mean? And that's why to me, when Sean tells him that story about how was the baseball game, was it the Red Sox?
Yeah, I think it was the Red Sox.
Where he's talking about like this super phenomenal game in history, how they had you know, him and his buddies, Sean and his buddies had slept out on the sidewalk in order to get tickets. They get tickets, and that he basically ditches the game for his wife. You know, his wife comes into the bar that they're at, and he ends up telling his friends, like, here, take the tickets, I have to see about a girl, you know. And I feel like that's him telling Will that story, is him trying to encapsulate, like, only you are in charge of, like, how far you're gonna go or what you do in this life. It's, you know, it's not what it shouldn't be like what your friends expect of you or what your peers expect of you, or, you know what I mean? It has to, you need to make your decisions on your own or whatever. So
no, for sure. Yeah, you can definitely tell the similarities between Sean, or more towards the even in the beginning when Lambeau is kind of explaining to Sean who Will is and where he's from, and he even says he's a Southie, and he's like, yeah, and he's like, oh wow, he's like, you know, I think you would work good with him because you're from the same neighborhood, and I think that kind of piques Sean's interest as well, you know. And one of the other scenes that I really like was it's towards the, I think it's in the third half of the third part of the film. Lambeau has Will do some type of work, and Lambeau's looking at it, and he's like, "Oh, have you thought about doing?" And Will's like, "It's right." And he's like, well, I mean, if you do it this way, and then Will's like, no, it's right. Trust me, it's right. And he's like, oh, okay. And he tells him, he's like, do you know how pointless this is to me? He's like, that shit's easy. He's like, you know how easy that is for me to do? He's like, and I feel sorry that I'm sorry that you don't know how to do it. He's like, but that's easy for me. He's like, you know how pointless it is for me to do this? And I think that that just shows you like the level of intelligence that he is. You know, the professor who's won the what did he win? He won some type of award for his mathematical equations, Professor Lambeau. But he's just basically he's like hot shit on his campus because of that. And Will burns the paper just to kind of piss him off, and he's like, "This shit's easy. I can remember this and rewrite it." That's how I took it in his head, or from what he was doing. And he kind of burns it, and then you see like the look of like shock and like, how could you do this, like to this basically this masterpiece that you just did on this paper, and how could you burn it away? And he's like, I'm sorry. I feel sorry for you. He's like, that scene in particular stuck out to me a lot. Just, he was you could tell Will was kind of just over it. He's like, I'm tired of coming to this and doing fucking little equations on the whiteboard or the chalkboard with you. He's like, this stuff is easy. It's not fun for me.
They actually, I think it might be before that scene, but when he's with the girl he's dating, Skylar, aka Minnie Driver, they're out, and he's constantly trying to finish her homework for her so they can go out and have fun instead of her studying, because he can do it like super quick. And she asks him, like, how are you able to do this? This is crazy. And he was like, like, think about it like Beethoven, right? Like, those guys, their instrument was like a piano. But when I look at a piano, all I see is like a big wooden box with some keys and, pedals at the bottom. But those guys, they saw like an instrument, and they just knew how to play. And so that's when he relates it back to himself, when he's like, well, when I look at like equations and stuff, I just always knew how to play. So it's like, it's come, some people just have that gift where they didn't really study or try to be good at it. They just have it instinctually for some reason,
Yeah.
And so he was just born that way. And they do a really cool thing, foreshadowing very early in the film, where you open up and you first meet Will, and he's in his little like fucking shitty flat 1-bedroom apartment, or whatever you want to call that, and he's just reading, but the like how fast he's turning the pages is insane, where he's like reading full novels in probably a couple of hours.
He kind of skims through the pages, but I think, like, she asked him, Minnie Driver, she asked him, do you have photographic memory? And then he even says, well, I don't think so. Like, I don't know. He's like, I just see something and I know how to do it. So I think I'd say that he has photographic memory, and then he has basically the I'm trying to think of the word. He has the ability to basically remember anything that he does, and then and I think he shows that as well. And like almost in the beginning of the movie, when he first meets Minnie, and that guy is trying to shit on Chucky, and he kind of goes over. He basically puts him in his place, and it's that guy with the ponytail.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he kind of goes over, oh yeah, you just, because he tries to, he's basically repeating what he read in a book to sound smarter than he actually is, and he calls him out on it, and he's like, are you just going to regurgitate everything that you read from the book, or do you have any thoughts of your own that you'd like to share with us? and he kind of breaks down his whole entire college career. He's like, yeah, you're going to read this, and then you're going to read this, and then you're going to change your philosophy on that because you're going to read this. And to me, that was just that scene is so amazing because the guy is kind of like, oh, geez. And Will's like, you know, I mean, well, we can stop talking about this, and if you have a problem, you know, we can go outside. But I like the way he says it because it's like, it's really like quiet. And he's like, you know, if you got a problem, we can go outside. We can go settle this right now. He's like, no, man, there's no problem. There's no problem. We're good.
It's cool. It's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. And he's like, all right. And I love Casey Affleck when all of them leave, and he grabs like a little like a peanut or something and throws it in his mouth, and he's like, our boy's wicked smart. And then he walks away, and I'm like, yes. Like that was such a perfect line to end that scene.
Oh man!
And it's funny that they know, like, you know, they know he's super smart and how, like, you know, he's not like them. I mean, he's like them in a way of, like, you know, they grew up together and all this, but, like, you know, intelligence-wise, he's way above them.
But at the same time, he doesn't like,
flaunt it or anything.
Yeah, he doesn't flex on them. If anything, he is hiding with them out of familiarity, out of, you know, comfortability. Right. He's trying to, he doesn't want to fuck over his friends because, as several characters throughout the film say, they would, you know, take a fucking bat to somebody's head for him, lay down in fucking front of traffic for him, you know what I mean? So it's like this game of back and forth where he doesn't want to overstep and abandon his friends, his, you know, his kind of inner circle, so to speak, because of, you know, his ability to do more. And then,
yeah,
and I feel like that's why, because it's interesting because he's the, obviously he's like a janitor at, where is it supposed to be, Harvard or somewhere?
I think so, yeah.
Wherever the college, or whatever the college.
I think it's MIT.
MIT, that's right. Matt Damon actually went to Harvard. That's why I'm getting confused. All right. But anyway, he's, you know, Will's character is just a janitor there. And that's the job that they gave him for his, I think, his parole officer. You know, and the way the movie kicks off is that the professors are putting equations in the hallways for students to try to solve on their own free time. So then when Will's there, like late at night, you know, buffing the floor or whatever, he sees the equation and he solves it. And of course, you know, people come in the next morning, all these, you know, kids, students and stuff, and they're like, who did it? Who solved it? This is right. You know, and the professor goes through kind of jumping hoops and stuff to trying to figure out who it was. And then he finally, you know, that's when that scene comes up where he catches Will working on, you know, another equation and during the day. And Lambeau's like, hey, you can't graffiti here. That's not acceptable here. And Will's walking away.
Fuck you.
Will's walking away. It's like, hey, buddy, fuck you. And then he disappears. And then, you know, of course, Lambeau and his little assistant, they check out the board and they realize that he wasn't doing graffiti. He was solving the equation. You know, and that's when Lambeau goes through all of this to try to save this kid because he knows that he's like this secret, you know, prodigy that's just been undiscovered up until this point, you know. So that's very interesting. And then of course we haven't really talked about the kind of love interest subplot with the Minnie Driver. Obviously, going back to the scene that you brought up in the bar when Will, you know, schools a guy and helps out his friend Chucky, it was all to impress this girl, Skylar, who's played by Minnie Driver. And then she gets disappointed in the bar because she comes over to him after the scuffle with the guy and is like, you know, I've been waiting this much time for you to come over and talk to me, and you haven't come over and talked to me. You're an idiot.